humbled. I'm very rarely humbled by guests, but I'm very, very humbled by you two gentlemen, because I remember when I was a freshman city councilman and we were talking in your office, Mayor Sills, and and Jim Baker was the president. I was telling you guys then, you know, as a matter of fact, you guys may recall, I tried to get a building in South Bridge in you guys' name then. So when I'm talking about this stuff, I'm not fronting, because I try to get it done then because I have so much respect. But welcome to the show, Mayor Baker, Mayor Sills. Let me ask you guys a quick question right off the bat, because you know I like asking questions. How difficult was it, or how difficult is it when you're the first? Like, you were the first African American president for City Council. Tell me a little bit about that, and what are some of the expectations or some of the things you went through?
Well, you know, I don't know if it's difficult once you get there. The expectations of people are always different than the reality. I think that Jim probably ran into that, the need for people to feel that you're able to change their lives or make things better just because you're there. And people really don't understand the offices. They don't understand council. They don't understand what the president of council does, and they don't understand what the mayor really does. And because you're running a corporation, that's what your job is, and you have very specific things that corporation does. Jim being the first mayor, I know he had to have a great deal of pressure because he knew what it meant.
Yeah. Was there a lot of pressure on you, Mayor?
Well, Norman, we perhaps should, I'll answer that in a second, but maybe we better make clear that Jim Baker and I are not having a political debate here, a campaign debate.
Right. But that's okay, too.
Yeah, well,
you know, they do call us Crossfire, so if we do have a debate, that's fine also.
Yeah, I think being the first of anything, if you're an African American, the expectations tend to be very high and often distorted. For me, when I became the first African American mayor in January of 1993, it was challenging and frustrating at the same time, mainly having to do with money. I had campaigned a full year in advance of being sworn in, and I said a lot of things about changes that I wanted to bring about and new roles I wanted the city to play. And then when I got sworn in, I found that we had an $11 million deficit. And I had to concentrate almost from the beginning, laying people off. And over the 4 years I was in office, when I came into office, the city had a city staff or employee group of around 1,300, which is about which is the comparable to the expected or the norm for a city with a population size of ours is about 1,000. So over the 8 years that I was in office, I've had to lay people off and reduce the city employee group from 1,300 to 1,028.
That's never fun.
No, it's not fun. And I found myself not only being able to expand services, but in some cases reducing services. And people had high expectations because I was the first, and a lot of energy had been put into my being elected. It was in 1992, in the primary election in September of 1992, some 52% of the African American registered voters came out which was atypical, because in a primary election, historically, African Americans had come out in the
20.
16, 17,
Wow.
18, 20% level.
Wow.
So, one of the challenges, maybe the major challenge and frustration for me, was coming into office when the city was experiencing a significant decline in revenue and money.
I've been wanting to ask both of you guys this question. I'm so glad that you both are on here. You know, because I worked for Dan Frawley. I did some interning. I knew Bobby Yars and all those guys, a little bit Maloney and those guys. And I had never seen or never noticed where the News Journal kept a count of deaths or shootings, you know, and most of them were in the African American community. Until you got in there, Mayor, and then by you, Jim. Is that frustrating that we can't seem to get our hands around black on black crime, especially in our communities? And you know, when folks look at us.
But I think that, again, when you look at the nation and you look what's happening across the country, there are very sound reasons why that is happening. And we have not formulated what I would call a national new movement towards dealing with the issues as they are today. Because when I was younger, oops, I know that just bested somebody's ear, but when I was younger, Jim was like at People's Settlement, the head of People's Settlement, and there was a lot of leadership and there was groups doing different things, but the movements, no matter where people were, was all headed towards one primary goal, which was freedom and all of that, equal rights. Today, that's not true. And so you have the fingers moving all over the place, but you don't have it connected. And yeah, it's always, I think the tragedy is just having the destruction that it does to families, because both sides lose in that kind of situation.
And I've said that, you know, but what's interesting, again, you know, if you sit up there and you're the, you know, you're the mayor.
Right.
You're the mayor. You're black, and we're looking at kids in our communities. You know what I mean? Right. I mean, teenagers. I mean, most of them, what, 17 to 25.
14 to 24.
You feel me? Getting shot and killed, and you got to sit in your office and sometimes wow, what can I do? You understand what I'm saying?
You mean, or something?
I mean, do it ever, when you go back to your office, or when you went back to your home, do you wow, you understand what I'm saying, Jim?
Well, there's a great sorrow.
That's my point, okay.
There is a great sorrow over that.
Because people are expecting in the certain communities that you guys could wave some kind of magic wand. You understand what I'm saying?
If you had told me in 1968 or 1978 that today you would see what you see now in the African American communities, especially in urban areas, what you see, I wouldn't have believed that would have happened, because it's like all of a sudden the genocide is, you don't have to worry about outsiders, it's the genocide internally. When you look at young kids not going through school, the dropout rate is horrendous. But you cannot be educated in today's knowledge-based economy, and it's worldwide. It's not just America, or it's not Delaware. So I don't know how Jim felt, but you do have a great deal of sadness about these young people carrying weapons and using them against each other and taking a life as if it was nothing.
Man, how did you feel about that? Didn't you had the FOP putting up signs like, you know, Jim Sills don't want to stop crime, let's move out of the city? I mean, I'm being honest. I mean, I think that when I get you guys on this show, I mean, I think that this is the first time that the community is going to get an opportunity to hear some of these questions, and I have to ask these questions.
Well, with respect to crime, and Jim has referred to it, the causative factors, to a large extent, are structural. They relate to a lot of economic injustice that people have been confronted with, relate to a lot of educational inequality that people have had to be confronted with. And those problems aren't ones that mayors in general, and especially black mayors, or any mayor, regardless of color, aren't able to deal with effectively. And they're problems that generally have to be dealt with at a national level, require a lot of governmental intervention. But even while we push for more governmental responsiveness and more governmental progressive policies and even money, at the same time, we as an African American community need to realize that a lot of the problems we are faced with are ones that only we can deal with.
Right.
You know, the problem of school dropouts, the problem,
Pregnancies.
yeah, pregnancies, the fact that we have 64% of inmates, when the ex-inmates becoming recidivists within several years after they get out of jail,
Right.
and a majority of that 64 to 67% of ex-inmates who become recidivists are black, African Americans. And we tend to reject our inmates, ex-inmates. We don't provide the kind of community support. We don't do enough to keep our kids in school. We don't do enough as an African American community to provide the kind of support. And so, yeah, we need the government, the federal government, the state to do more, provide more money. At the same time, we have institutions and organizations within the African American community that we have a lot of control over, in fact, most control over, that we need to involve in problem solving. And so there's a matter here of self-responsibility, self-sufficiency, self-help that ought to be expected of the African American community, even while we continue our advocacy to get government to do more.
I'm gonna ask you guys. That's a good segue to my next question. Do you think that there's time to look at a Wilmington school district? Do you think that desegregation kind of destroyed, or I won't, destroy may be a strong word, kind of disfranchised our community, you know, because we're sending people everywhere.
Well,
let's talk about the education piece.
You got to remember who does what to whom and who controls what.
Right.